The environment has to be
What we are saying is have a heart.
We've got to be able to regenerate our
There'll
economy.
be people who are kind, people who are cruel, but that's life. You can be passionate about pigeons. I'm fine with that.
What's wrong with Singaporeans?
Let's now move into another area. We're going to move into what can we do if we have people who are not very responsible or who are not ready to own pets. So what can be done?
I guess that's where education comes in. Yeah, it is very important to educate the younger generation to know about responsible pet ownership, the screening of potential buyers, and
Screening of potential buyers. So you say that this is a responsibility of the parents or responsibility of the pet shop or what?
I mean, hopefully it's enforced upon pet shop owners and stuff, because parents, I'm a teacher, and some parents are not really licensed to be parents. I deal with parents as well,
Alright.
and I feel like sometimes they require, even like people like me, I'm not married, and they will actually ask parenting skills from me.
Okay.
Yeah, and these are the people who are not equipped with the necessary skills or even the cognitive
No,
abilities.
it's because you're a teacher.
Because when it comes to educating the young, right, I realize that sometimes the students will be the ones who knows what's right and what's wrong, but the parents are the one who enforce certain things, and yeah, the students cannot do anything.
On this point, I think the MOE has introduced or is going to introduce in 2014 a very good program, the Character and
Yeah,
Citizenship Education
correct.
Program. Tell us about it. You're a teacher.
That is to, it's like our CME back then. It's just that it is CME plus National Education. Now it's called CCE. The teachers have got the flexibility to choose from various different genres and categories of like what kind of lesson you want to conduct in class. And I'm actually currently working with SPCA to help them with lesson plans and stuff, so that any teacher, all you need to do is to look at the lesson plan, the resources and everything is there, how to conduct the lesson, everything will be there, and it will be on a website.
Okay.
Easy for them to do all this. Yes.
But what are some of the other things that we can do?
I think obviously legislation comes into place as well.
Okay.
So there probably will be amendments coming in soon for the Animals and Birds Act. So one of this trying to increase the barrier in terms of ownership of pets. So setting up a minimum age before you can buy, making sure that, so putting the onus also on the pet shops. So you want to make the profits, but you got to screen the buyers. So make sure that they are able to look after before
How are
you
you going
sell.
to implement that?
Well, I guess that's what we've been discussing, and that's what I have told the media as well. This all sounds very rosy, but now it comes to enforcement. Because we're telling the pet shops now that, look, you want to make your $1,000 profit, you now have to make it ethically. And it's completely up to your morals now to make sure that you do this ethically.
Okay.
I mean, same with the minimum age. It will be hard to enforce, but I think it is at least a step forward.
Okay, we have minimum age. Now, legislation before 2002 was a $500 fine or 6 months jail term. After that, it was increased to $10,000 or 1 year's jail term, and even that was considered insufficient. And the committee has now recommended legislation to increase this to $50,000 or 3 years jail term.
That's for the repeat or recalcitrant people.
The malicious ones.
And I think part of that is the important part of that legislation amendments or the proposed is that, so we're not just saying fine the companies, but we're now going to have a prohibition order as well.
At the end of the day, the important thing is the enforcement. And this is all, I think, something that we take issue with. You can put the penalties up to $1 million, 100 years jail. So what?
When you say enforcement, are you talking of legal enforcement in the court of law? Or are you talking of peer pressure from the public?
Well, enforcement from the law. Because if you look at the figures, I think you'll laugh out loud, because over a span of 5 years, the EB has probably done successful prosecution for like 10 or something, 10 cases or something.
Okay.
Because that was in the review.
So the penalty doesn't help if the cases of prosecution are so few.
Yeah, exactly. There's no bite at all in the law, because the judges are not thinking that animal abuse offences warrant that severity. You probably get a heavier penalty if you were to scribble on a wall or something.
If I can add, one of the issues is also we lack of witnesses
coming forward.
Willing witnesses.
Yes, because we do have public, calling us and saying that, hey, I saw this, then that's where we know about there's abuse cases. But the next thing is when it's a genuine abuse case, and when we ask if are you willing to come forward and testify against this individual, saying that you have witnessed the whole thing, and the next thing they just backed out.
I'm just curious to know whether this is the same situation in other countries.
In the West, they're pretty strict about this stuff.
No, but are they willing to be witness to?
Perhaps there will be some who won't step up, but there would be more who would do their part as a
So what gives them
citizen
this
of
conviction
community.
that we don't have yet?
It's the culture, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the education
Culture
part
to be able to
comes in.
speak up.
Yeah.
The way you were brought up.
There are very few who are like Ricky or Louis or Veron who would speak up publicly and so passionately for the animals. But on the other hand, I don't think you should always pin it on the witnesses who step away from the situation. You should also look at the part where why aren't the people who are responsible for investigating the matter moving further with the investigation.
We have to deal with a lot of hit and run incidents.
Yeah.
Where even the license of the cars and everything is recorded down. You lodge a police report, nothing gets done.
Is it because they are not equipped to handle these cases?
No, they just push it to SPCA.
Yeah.
So you call them, they say call SPCA, SPCA asks them to call the police, and then they just...
Yes. It's a grey area. Nobody wants to deal with it because it's an animal.
So there's a very big disconnect here where animal welfare is concerned, where cruelty is concerned. We've got legislation, we've got the penalties there, but there's a disconnect from the enforcement bit. Who is going to catch the person responsible?
If somebody reports a case of abuse, what is the process to follow? What are the things that need to be done so that we can have successful prosecution? This has not been addressed at all.
Okay, so you're saying that there are gaps in seeing the prosecution come to a successful conclusion.
There's been many cases that were reported. It's always been swept under the carpet.
At least 90% of the cases.
And is it from lack of investigation or is it from lack of evidence?
The lack of conviction to
That's
investigate.
right. Yeah.
Why didn't they move forward to investigate the bashing up of the Pomeranian in Sengkang?
That's right.
That was so easy. There were witnesses at the coffee shop.
Who are willing to talk?
Yes.
They could have been willing to talk.
People know who it was?
Yes.
People in that community knew who
Yes,
it was.
because we were investigating that case.
Yeah.
And,
And that person is still scot-free?
Yes. And at that time, I remember it very distinctly. My impression was that our police force is the best in the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
In many respects.
Anywhere in Singapore, if somebody committed a murder, that guy's going to be caught within 3 days. I'm so sure of our police force.
Just like Coven murders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
But when it came to a bashed up Pomeranian, somehow they
Nothing
couldn't
gets
find the person who did it.
Yeah, we need to know what is their viewpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whether or not perhaps they need a special unit to look after animal abuse cases. Because
Usually they would ask the AVA to handle. And then the AVA will sometimes say, if you do a police report, then it falls under
does the
purview of
AVA
police.
have got investigation officers?
They
Yes,
do.
they do.
They do.
They do.
Yeah.
So why are we talking about the police?
Well, it depends on who you report it to first.
If you report it to the police technically will then report it to AVA, who then takes over the case.
Okay, so there is a process.
Yes,
All right.
We do have a dog.
No, the AVA may not take over the case.
That's true.
Because,
technically.
yes, because they would say, well, since you reported to the police, it's under the
Then
purview
they
of the
would.
police. And the police don't
Okay.
want to deal with animal cases. That's the thing.
For the case of Barnabas, right, he was actually surrendered by his owner, who is neglected him for a really long while. He has rotting ears with maggots and stuff.
Yeah.
And the owner just surrendered him with another dog to AVA and expecting AVA to put it down.
Okay.
I guess the point is, if something like that happens, the first thing to go to is not to surrender the dogs, but to go to a vet
A
and
vet,
seek
yeah.
treatment, and then you decide whether or not
Correct.
you want to
Correct.
surrender it. I think that's the right.
Do vets have any powers to report cases?
Well, we should report the cases, but there's a grey area here, because if the person brings the dog to a vet, it means that you are actually doing something right. So whether or not there's neglect, then it's very hard to say. So if
It's like, child abuse. If you see a school inspector, a doctor sees a child having wounds, then it is their duty to report.
correct.
So do vets have this responsibility?
Some vets do report it. Yeah. Others might stand back a little bit and say, oh no, I won't step back. I'm not going to be involved with this. I guess
I think that culture hasn't seeped into Singapore yet, where vets actually report cases of abuse, right?
there are vets that report cases, and I know of them.
Yeah.
And plenty of them do.
Yeah.
But a part of it in me, tells me that even if I report, they won't do anything lah.